Take me back to that day, December 1st. You're in the SUV. You've got meetings at the White House. Did you know you were going to end up in the Oval Office before the day was up?
I assumed I was. As I expected, the president heard I was in the building and told me to come downstairs.
Attorney General Bill Barr knew he had infuriated the president. Since election night, Trump had been insisting he'd won.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country.
At that point,
Barr disagreed and said publicly that Trump's claims of election fraud were wrong.
we hadn't seen any evidence of broad fraud that would have affected the outcome of the election, and I knew that that was not the party line.
Now, Barr was being summoned to the president's private dining room, where he was going to say the same thing in person.
And I told him that all this stuff was bullshit and about election fraud. And, it was wrong to be shoveling it out the way his team was. And he started asking me about different theories, and I had the answers. I was able to tell him, this is wrong because of this.
You're trying to set him straight.
Yes. And he listened. He was obviously getting very angry about this. I said, okay, well, look, I understand you're upset with me, and I'm perfectly happy to tender my resignation. And then, boom!
He slaps the desk.
He slapped the desk, and he said, accepted, accepted. And then, boom, he slapped it again, accepted. Go home. Don't go back to your office. Go home. You're done.
Tonight, for the first time, Barr is telling his story of how he and Trump arrived at that table-pounding moment. In his memoir, One Damn Thing After Another, Barr reveals not just how his time with Trump ended, but how it all began.
You're controversial.
Yeah, that's okay.
Though it ended in a blow-up, for most of his tenure as Trump's Attorney General, Barr faced criticism that he was too close to the president, putting Trump's interests before the country's.
Justice Department officials are accusing Barr and the president of interfering, quote, in the fair administration of justice.
He has hired a hatchet man as his attorney general to rig the system.
A lot of blowback coming Bill Barr's way.
The narrative, and we live in the age of narrative, not facts. The narrative was I was a toady to Trump, and I would do Trump's bidding, and the media constantly went out with that story.
Were you?
Well, I think no, because I tried to take every issue that came to me and decided what I thought was the right thing, and I didn't really care what people thought about me.
The criticism that framed Barr's time in the Trump administration actually started before he even took the job.
We now have a special counsel to head the Russia investigation.
Barr was a private citizen when the Trump presidency began and had deep concerns about the investigation into the Trump campaign's alleged ties to Russia.
I was skeptical of the Russiagate thing, and I thought it was quite possibly being used as a political weapon. And the more I heard about it, the more it started looking that way.
The man heading that investigation, Robert Mueller, had been a colleague of Barr's decades earlier at the Department of Justice.
You had a good relationship with Mueller?
Yes, we were friends. And our wives were friends, our friends.
Are you still friends?
I don't know.
Mueller's investigation expanded, targeting the president for possible obstruction of justice. Barr thought Mueller's legal theory was flawed and that the power of the presidency was in jeopardy. He wrote a lengthy, unsolicited memo about why the president should not be investigated. He emailed it to the Department of Justice.
Many people look at that memo as an audition for the job of Attorney General. Look at this. This is how I lean.
Well, first, I wasn't interested in being Attorney General. And second, if I wanted to be Attorney General, there were much more direct ways of auditioning for it.
Your mind sounds like it was clearly made up before we even got to this point on the Russia investigation, that it was a phony investigation.
No, it wasn't made up. I was, as I say in my book, I was suspicious of it. It didn't ring true to me.
Months after Barr wrote that memo, the president fired his first Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who had refused to intervene in the Mueller investigation. The president offered the job to Barr.
Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be...
At his confirmation hearing,
I do.
senators grilled Barr about his objectivity.
whether you should recuse yourself from the Mueller investigation.
Would you seek to stop that portion of the Mueller investigation?
He swore he would not interfere in the investigation and even said this about his old friend, Bob Mueller.
I have the utmost respect for Bob and his distinguished record of public service.
I thought I was doing okay. And then my chief of staff came up and said, there's a problem. We heard from the White House the president is apoplectic. He thinks you were too nice to Mueller. He was thinking about pulling the nomination.
Was it a little bit of an introduction to what it might be like working for Donald Trump?
Yeah, sure. But, you know, I went in with my eyes open. I didn't go in to be best buddies with President Trump.
5 weeks into the job, the Mueller report was in Barr's hands.
This is an NBC News special report.
This is all we know. Bob Mueller has submitted his report to the Attorney General, period.
Mueller had wrapped up his investigation, but Barr did not immediately release the full report. Classified and grand jury information needed to be redacted. Instead, he wrote a 4-page letter for Congress on Mueller's findings.
In a perfect world, you wanted the entire report out.
Yes. I would be happy to put the whole report out the day I got it.
But you didn't.
Right.
And ended up writing this 4-page summary.
Well, the reason I didn't was because there's material in there that under law cannot go out and be made public. So I said that I would put out the principal conclusions of the report. And the conclusions were there was no collusion, and that he didn't make a decision on obstruction, but he lays out all the facts in the report. And I say that he does not exonerate Trump.
But critics say Barr essentially did exonerate the president. He said Mueller's evidence did not establish that Trump committed a crime. What Barr left out of his 4-page letter, Mueller's description of multiple acts by the president that were capable of exerting undue influence over law enforcement investigations. Mueller cited the president's effort to have the special counsel removed, his attempts to limit the scope of the probe, as well as his public attacks on the investigation. Mueller's full report would not be released for nearly a month. Trump's voice filled the vacuum.
So it's complete exoneration, no collusion, no obstruction. Thank you very much. Thank you.
This 4-page letter, this summary, was immediately met with wide criticism that it didn't really accurately reflect what Mueller was saying.
Well, that's not true. What it was a tantrum by the people who were hoping that Mueller would be able to bring down Trump.
Wait a minute. Mueller himself wrote you a letter complaining. He said the summary didn't capture the substance of his report and that there was now public confusion.
No, he didn't say the substance of his report.
Actually, he did. Mueller wrote Barr's letter did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance of this office's work and conclusions. It wasn't just Mueller. Later, the 4-page letter came up in court cases seeking the unredacted Mueller report. One judge said Barr distorted the findings and questioned whether Barr was trying to create a one-sided narrative.
A second judge says it was disingenuous, there was a lack of candor. So the complaints are piling up that this 4-page summary didn't really capture the essence or the heart of what was in the report. Do you reject those?
I totally reject it. This was not a summary of the report. It was a description of his bottom line conclusions. You know, if people are waiting outside of the courthouse and want to know what the verdict is, you don't go out and give them a 16-page summary of the trial. You say guilty or not guilty. That's what I did.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.